Alright, so this is going to be your first of many demos. Hopefully we'll film them for you, but maybe not. But, you know, it's going to be easier for you all to see, and we can play it over and over if you need to have repetition here. So there's all kinds of different washes. I'm going to demonstrate those, along with water and color mixing and different kinds of brushes and stuff like that. So we'll start with the wet into wet. Background, for the most part, is what it's used for. Soft edges. From now on, anytime you're in doubt as to what to do to start, just start with the wet into wet, which means wet paint into wet water. You can use a color in your water or just white. You can put a little color in so you can see it. You can have it be really puddly, or you can let it sit for a minute or two and have it soak in, but it's just, you put 2 or 3 colors on, and it just kind of moves around. There's a kind of an ochre color, and just drop other colors into it. More or less color will give you softer or harder effects. You can use a spray bottle for this and spritz it. You can blow it around with a hairdryer if you want. Most people just let it sit for a whole big background. See how soft it is, and it dries even lighter than this. So it's a really nice way to begin. Get rid of the white paper and start a painting. So we'll set that one aside. Next one is a little more site specific, still wet into wet. I'll use a smaller brush. You're going to practice. You can just make little leaf shapes. Again, I'll use some colors so you can see it. Little leaf shapes, and wet it inside, and the color won't flow outside of that wet area. So I'll put a little gold in there, a little green, pick it up, move it around, so you get some really soft effects that way. Gonna blow on it a little bit. I'm gonna have you just practice all kinds of little shapes. So I can do little spirally doodles. Drop some color in, and it'll just kind of run down smoothly. Gives you some nice effects that way. You can also, I'm going to show you a graded wash later on to create light and dark, but you can use a wet into wet technique as well. I'm just going to make a ball here, a sphere, and just lay color down on one side where it's shadowy. And the water will just help it flow across. So you get a little light and shadow contrast there. Maybe another color. That's a good color. So wet into wet specific areas. I mean, you could spend some time just painting a few leaves. It'll soak into the paper a little bit while you're painting other leaves, and then just add a little bit. Add the veins. Etc., etc. So it's a very soft effect, whether it's over the whole background or little portions. Graded wash, that's what I was talking about. This time, by the way, every time you put your paint out, you have palettes with special compartments. You always want to think puddles, pools of paint. You want to get out enough paint to pull out of the main batch so that you can just, puddle it up. You can always get a little darker, but you can't get lighter. So watercolor is a lot of layering. So if you can see these puddles. A flat wash, you can certainly do it with any kind of brush you have. I'm going to use a bigger brush just because it works a little better. Depends a lot on gravity. So you have to mix up quite a bit of the color you want to use, because you can't backtrack. You need to have flat wash is like just a brilliant blue sky with no clouds, no nothing. With the paint, you don't want any streaks, you don't want any blotches, you don't want any backflow. So I'm trying to get a good amount of this orange color together. Always remember to have a piece of scrap paper, which I'll supply you, so you can test the color on the side. And this, you make one stroke, you hold up your paper and let the gravity pull it down so you get that bead across the bottom. Pick up the same color paint again, overlapping that bead. The gravity helps you. It helps you flow down, overlap that bead again. And if you didn't have enough color, you had to stop and mix it up, this would dry. You wouldn't get that seamless continuous color. If I were to go back and forth with more than one brush stroke, there's a different amount of paint on there, and that'll get you a different effect too. You won't get that flat color. So this is kind of the simplest looking wash, but it's really almost the hardest one to get. It takes some practice. But that bead and tipping is really important. Graded wash, kind of the same technique. I'll use green this time. Pool up your paint, puddle it up. This time, let's imagine the light on this ball I'm going to draw, or in the cone and whatever. It's coming from the left, so the shadow would be on the right. So you make a line, or an area for the shadow side. Rinse out your brush, and take that water, and overlapping that area again, you can kind of lift it if you want that bead. Rinse again. Every time you take that gradation out, you rinse out your brush. It gets a little watery. Let's try a cone here. So there's a matter of controlling water. Sometimes, you if you have a paper towel handy too, you can put your brush in, dab it a little bit so it's not quite as watery. White lines and colored lines. In watercolor, you can't use white paint. You have to create white by either masking out the white paper with masking tape or a liquid frisket, it's called, rubber cement essentially, or you learn to paint around the white lines. So this is kind of a practice I want you to really work with a lot. See how close you can get the color lines next and leaving a white space. How small of a little white line can you get? If I were doing a shape, maybe I want an orange rectangle on an orange background, but I need or a color background of some kind. I'll mix up kind of darker. Leave a white line around the edge. How close can I get from far away? Sometimes you don't even see that white line, but it just lets it be a little fresher. In watercolor, oftentimes the colors bleed together and it looks kind of dull and dead. There's no light, and watercolor kind of depends on that sparkly light. So leaving white lines, I'll jump down to the tip heel brush stroke. I'll try a couple different brushes. This is the best one to use most often if you can get the hang of it for line work. There'll be some line work. So the tip of the brush and the heel of the brush. The trick with watercolor too is to get the brush to do most of the work for you. Fewer strokes, better results than a lot of, you can't rework the stuff very much. So a tip of the heel, tip of the brush rather, heel of the brush. So you push down and you lift up and you kind of twist back into a point again. If I alternate, it's great for waves and hair, calligraphy. I could write my name for you. But as you can see, I'm going to try to leave little white lines in between. So if I were to fill a whole area with this, am I trying to paint brown lines on white paper, or am I looking for white lines on a brown background? You can kind of see, I'm already doing what most people do. You start out with a nice tip heel, hold the brush straight up, press down a lot, see what kind of extreme you can get, and then you get lazy and you start making the same thickness line all the way through. So with one brush stroke, my husband gave me an orchid once, and I could paint an orchid in one brush stroke. If I get the hang of this, you've got to get some facility with your brushwork. So heel, kind of to the tip, tip, heel, heel, tip, and there's an orchid in just a couple strokes. So simplified orchid, but nevertheless, tip, heel, brush stroke, and then colored lines. So colored lines follow with the brush stroke. I mean, you can use other ways to make lines, just regular lines, but the tip, heel, brush stroke to varying degrees. If I use a half of one, not an all, like tip to heel, but just let's say tip to heel, and come back up again. Oh, look, I've got a little bird, almost a little birdie, or kind of jiggle a little bit, flower petals. Just halfway. Instead of doing a lot of extra stroking to get that effect, you get it in one. Or tip to heel, tip to heel. Look, it's a flock of birds. Look at that. So to get used, and that's why watercolor brushes specifically are important, because they're soft, they hold a lot of water, they allow you to do a lot of work with the color without running out. Wicking up extra water, I could have done this on that graded wash because I definitely had some extra water going on there. But we'll just save this piece of paper specifically for that. So let's say I'm playing around with the wet into wet and I've made my puddles like she said, and now, oh my God, now I've got all this extra water I don't know what to do with. You can take your brush, and again, only watercolor brushes are capable of doing this because they're so soft. You squeeze out all the water, clean out the brush, squeeze out the water, and you can take it and just wick up extra water. You can also use this to create graded areas. If I don't press, it's just like drawing, if I don't press down as hard, I get less taken off. So just wicking up, if it kind of falls down to the bottom of the page, you can wick it up instead of wiping it. I've had in figure drawing class people do a nude, a figure, just a flat color, whatever that's doing, and then wick off the parts where there's light. You pretty much have to, wick off a little bit, squeeze out your brush, wick off a little more. Otherwise, you're just reapplying paint, and you don't want to do that either. This brush is a little flimsy. So you can get some really soft effects that way. So wicking up water. Now all this stuff, you're not going to get it the first time. Some you will, some you won't. But have patience. Try them again and again. That's what I've done over time. Creating edges and outlines and lines in general by overlapping colors and shapes. Now I'll be getting out the hairdryer. So this is opposite of leaving a little white space around each shape. This time you'll make one shape. There's that flat wash kind of, sort of. And I want to dry it. Hopefully you don't get this kind of stuff. It's cool if you want it, but I didn't really want it that way. But anyway, take your time more than I do. And then a second color, or even the same color, but overlapping in watercolor, gives you a darker color. We'll talk about overlapping some other time. Layering of colors. I'll make this kind of light. I'll test this up. It's not a very nice color, but oh well. And then, if this has to be perfectly dry, the tiniest little overlap I can do, and I'll get a new color, or a new edge, or a new line on these two shapes, between these two shapes. So I might have you do an assignment, a homework, where there's several colorful, clear wine glasses or something, or bottles, and they overlap. And then you get a third color between those two. So, I think that's all of the things I want to show you in this demo, because this will take you the rest of the day and then some homework practice to get these. And once you kind of master these, you'll be able to do anything I have you do all semester, pretty much. And you'll come up with techniques of your own, but these are the basics. Okay? All right, practice.